Hi, my name is Tom Wirek. I'm with Your Choice Realty Brokerage, and you can find more information about me at justsellinghomes.ca. And I'm here this week with guest Heather. She's a home stager. Heather, can you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I own a company called Restyled Spaces and Home Staging Company here in Ottawa. And I started the company in 2015, and I help clients all over the greater Ottawa area preparing their homes and properties for sale.
Yeah. So as you know, around 90% of people start their home search when they are serious about home searching on the internet. So the first thing that obviously they're going to see is the pictures of the property and the location. Can you tell us about a little bit how the home staging helps display the properties on the internet, and when the people actually come into the house, what do they see? What's the benefit of home staging?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, when you're looking on MLS, like most people do now, a home that is untidy outside, has sort of old furniture or dead plants and things like that, it doesn't really look that appealing. You only get one chance to make a first impression, so you better knock their socks off. And so home staging, what it does is it really understands what a buyer is looking for, and we sort of set a plan up to that it looks most appealing and makes that really wow first impression for the buyer. So as people are looking online now, and they can easily swipe from one room to the next, a house that is not been staged is very visually unappealing, right? There's often, when we look through these MLS listings, rooms don't look put together, and one room necessarily doesn't look like it belongs to the next, right? The house looks very...
It could be from the different house, like when you look at it.
Exactly.
It has to be, the flow has to be consistent.
That's right.
You're looking for consistency of pictures and of feeling, of the buyer actually feeling the house.
That's right. And so one of the things that I do when I'm in a home with a client and I'm putting this plan together is that we are cognizant of the way that the online pictures are going to look, because we're going to develop not only the flow and continuity, we're going to make sure that the things that we want the buyers to focus on are able to be seen. So how is it blocking the most beautiful asset of the house, like a bay window, for example, and we can't see it? Well, we want to make sure that we uncover all of that, so online the people are focusing and seeing, wow, that is a beautiful window. Wow, look at the natural light that's coming in, right?
So you would advise them on, for example, type or color of drapes or whatever that they have to use to expose that.
Yep, or even removing the drapes so that we can see what it is that they're trying to sell. We're also taking into consideration the camera angle, right? So a staging plan understands how's the camera going to take the picture and what areas of the rooms need to be sort of tidied up. Is there things that can sort of be hidden in a corner that's not going to be? Maybe. But it's all about creating that plan so that visually it looks really, really appealing. And developing a color palette is really important so that every room has a touch of that color. So that while you're scrolling through those pictures, it looks like the house is put together. And that's all part of the plan that I present to clients.
So pictures are the first impression, right?
Absolutely.
But then people actually come into the house, and do you think they find this different?
The value?
Than the actual pictures that show? And have you found on many occasions, like when you went into the house, before and after the staging, what was the actual emotions of the sellers or the display of the property?
Yeah.
How do you find that?
Oftentimes when I'm in a home with clients and we roll up our sleeves and we actually move furniture around and we change artwork and we change the way the room feels, we often say to the sellers, why haven't I been living in my house this way? Why have we been living in it for 10, 20 years?
I don't want to move anymore.
I don't want to move anymore, which we don't want that to happen. But it's because we've sort of made the furniture feel like it's supposed to. We've added the right color. We've created enough light and space for the room to actually show itself off. And so the transformations usually are fairly significant, or the sellers are emotional about it and the buyers love it.
Hey, I have an idea for sellers. So you hire Heather to stage the house for sale, and then you actually hire her when you buy a new house so that you can live in that perfect world with the space that you need, right? Because you're moving because you need extra space or you need less space, depending on the situation, right?
Great idea.
So,
Absolutely.
thank you very much for coming to the show. Again, what is your website that people can check out?
Yeah, so you can reach me by email at heather@restyledspaces.ca or my website at www.restyledspaces.ca.
This is Tom Widdick with justsellinghomes.ca. Check out our channel, subscribe, and share this video. Thank you.